I was never the kind of kid who expected much from my father. He wasn't the type to show emotion. He wasn't the dad who'd pick me up from school or take me to sports games. He was the one who stayed in the garage, buried in his work, pretending that providing for us was enough. The summer I turned 17, I was used to the silence in the house. I'd gotten good at pretending I didn't care. But one evening, everything changed. It was late, well past midnight. I had just finished a late shift at the diner. My mom was already asleep, and I thought Dad would be in his usual spot, hunched over at the workbench, fixing whatever broken appliance he could find. But when I opened the garage door, I saw something I couldn't forget. There he was, sitting on the floor, his face hidden in his hands, and he was crying. I stood there for what felt like forever, frozen. My dad, the man who'd spent my entire life, with his emotions locked away, was breaking. For the first time in my life, I saw him as human. And next to him was a box. A plain cardboard box tucked in the far corner of the garage. The kind of box you only hide if you're trying to keep something from the world. It had a single piece of tape on it. And scrawled in black marker, in shaky handwriting, was the phrase, "Do not open until I'm gone." I didn't know what to do. Should I comfort him? Should I pretend I didn't see him at his lowest point? But that box, it felt like the key to something I wasn't supposed to know. And for the first time, I felt my curiosity overpower my respect for his privacy. It was the next day before I got the chance to really look at the box. Dad was back to his usual self. Working, silent, distant. I wasn't. I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. So when he wasn't home that afternoon, I made my move. I snuck into the garage. The box was just sitting there, looking so ordinary yet full of weight. I hesitated for a second, feeling like I was violating some sacred rule. But I couldn't help it. I opened it. Inside there was a stack of old letters, photographs, and a small, dusty envelope. The letters were from a woman. I didn't recognize the name at first, but the words burned into my mind. To my love, my secret. I can't keep this from you any longer. And that was when I realized my father wasn't just hiding some past mistake. He was hiding an entire life. I sat down in the garage, the heat of the summer day forgotten as I sifted through the letters, each one more personal than the last. They spoke of love, of regret, of promises broken. And then I found something that turned my stomach. A picture of my father, but not the man I knew. This was a younger, happier version of him, standing next to a woman I'd never seen before, holding a child. A child who looked exactly like me. Suddenly, the air around me felt suffocating. My breath quickened. Was I looking at a part of my father's life I wasn't supposed to know? Had I been living a lie all these years? I put everything back in the box, my mind spinning. I couldn't just forget what I'd discovered. I needed answers. I needed to know who that woman was and why my father had hidden it all from me. I waited until dinner. My parents were quiet as usual, eating in that strange, familiar silence. Then out of nowhere, I blurted out, "Who's Carol? And why didn't you ever tell me about her?" The air in the room shifted. For a second, it felt like time stopped. My father's eyes locked onto mine. He didn't say anything, just stared. And for the first time in my life, I saw the cracks in his armor. He wasn't just a distant man. He was a man haunted by his past. The silence that followed my question was unbearable. My father didn't move. He didn't speak. He just looked at me, his hands trembling slightly, as though the weight of everything he'd kept hidden was finally breaking through. And then slowly he stood up. Without a word, he walked to the garage door. I followed, my heart pounding in my chest. He reached for the box, the one I had opened earlier, and brought it inside. He set it on the kitchen table, the same table we'd eaten at for years, the same one where my mother would always ask us about our day. But now the table felt like a battlefield. "I never wanted you to find this," my father said, his voice thick with regret. "I thought it was better this way. For all of us." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream at him, demand answers. Another part of me felt like I wasn't ready for what he was about to say. He sat down, hands clasped in front of him. Her name was Carol. His voice was strained. She was the love of my life. Before your mother. Before all of this. I could feel the weight of his words press down on me, each one heavier than the last. But that wasn't the part that got me. It was the next thing he said. Carol was pregnant. And that child, his voice faltered. That child was yours. The room spun. I thought I was going to pass out. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But all I could do was stare at him. At this man I thought I knew. And in that moment, I realized I didn't know him at all. "You have a sister," he continued, his voice barely a whisper. But when I found out about her, I couldn't bear it. I thought if I cut ties with Carol, if I buried it all, it would go away. That's why I never told you. I thought I could protect you from it. A sister. A child. My own blood, who I'd never known existed. For a moment, all I could think about was the picture. The woman who looked like a stranger. The child who looked exactly like me. But I was too shocked to speak. Too angry. Too betrayed. "So," I finally managed, my voice shaking, "what happened? Why didn't you tell me?" He ran his hand through his hair, exhausted. I wasn't strong enough to handle it. I had a family now, a wife I loved. I was scared, and I didn't know how to face it. He wiped his eyes, something I had never seen him do before. The truth is, Carol died 3 years ago. I never even got to say goodbye to her. I felt the ground beneath me shift. The man I'd known as my father, the stoic, silent figure I had grown up with, was unraveling in front of me. And as much as I hated him for keeping this from me, I couldn't help but feel sorry for him. He had buried this secret so deep, it had eaten away at him from the inside. But it wasn't just about him. It was about me, and my sister, whose name I didn't even know. Is she still out there?" "My sister?" I asked, my voice tight. He nodded, but it wasn't a simple answer. "She's been looking for you." "I know that. But I never told her anything about you or about me. I didn't know how. I thought if I just kept everything in the past, it wouldn't matter. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to scream at him again. Part of me wanted to apologize for the anger I'd held for so many years. "You're telling me all of this now? After all this time?" I asked, my voice breaking. "I don't know how to fix this, son. I wish I could go back and do things differently, but I can't." I stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the empty yard. It was the same yard I'd played in as a kid, but now it felt like a different place entirely. The world I thought I knew had cracked wide open, revealing something darker beneath the surface. But then a thought hit me, something that shifted my perspective. I turned back to him. "Where is she, my sister?" "I need to find her." My father looked up, eyes full of regret. "I don't know where she is, but I've heard rumors. She's in town working at a small diner." He reached for the box again, this time pulling out a crumpled piece of paper. "I've written down everything I know. Her name's Emily. I'm sorry I never gave you this." I took the paper, my hands trembling. But this wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about the future, a future I couldn't ignore no matter how much it hurt. I left that night with a plan, one I wasn't sure I was ready for. I didn't know what I was going to find when I met my sister, but I knew one thing for sure. The past was never just something to bury, it was something you had to face. And if I wanted to make sense of my life, my family, my identity, I had to face it, head on. The truth might hurt, but sometimes it's the only thing that can set you free. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The paper with my sister's name, Emily, was burning a hole in my pocket. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down at something I couldn't yet understand. I didn't know if I was angry, scared, or just numb. Maybe all three. The past few days felt like a blur, everything spinning faster than I could catch up. And yet, there I was, with the name of a sister I never knew existed, trying to find her in a world that had already buried her. I had no idea what kind of life she had lived, what kind of person she was. And I didn't know how to begin this search, but I had to. Because something inside me, some part of me that I couldn't ignore, was telling me to find her, to make things right. The diner was just off Main Street. It wasn't much to look at, a small, dingy place with neon signs that flickered like they had seen better days. The kind of diner that seemed to have been stuck in the 80s, with cracked vinyl booths and a jukebox in the corner that no one ever used. But as soon as I walked in, I saw her. She was behind the counter, flipping pancakes. Her hair was messy, but in a way that made her look real, authentic. Her hands moved with practiced ease, and her eyes were focused, but not on the pancakes. She looked like someone who had learned to shut out the world. And that's when I knew she was mine. I took a deep breath and walked up to the counter. She didn't notice me at first, but when I cleared my throat, she looked up. Her eyes were the same as mine, the same color, the same depth. But there was something else there too, a hardness, a guardedness. I hesitated, unsure of what to say. But in that moment, I didn't need words. I just knew. Emily? I asked, my voice shaking. She froze. The pancake spatula fell from her hand. Who are you? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm your brother, I said. I'm Jose. For a second, she just stared at me. I could see the recognition flash across her face, then confusion, and finally fear. Brother? She whispered. What are you talking about? My father never said anything about you? I know, I said. He didn't want me to know. But I found something. I found the box he left behind. And I had to come find you. She didn't speak for a moment, just turned away, as if trying to collect herself. When she turned back, her face had hardened again. You don't know what it's like, she said, her voice shaking with something that wasn't anger but pain. You don't know what it's like to grow up without a father who cared, without anyone who cared. You think you can just waltz in here and make everything better? That's not how this works. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to say something, like to apologize, to explain, but I couldn't find the words. Because I knew. I knew exactly what she meant. I wasn't the one who had suffered. I hadn't been abandoned. I hadn't been left with a hole that I'd spent my entire life trying to fill. But I didn't walk away. Because deep down, I knew she needed to hear what I had to say. Look, I don't know what you've been through, I said softly, trying to reach her. I can't change the past. But I can tell you this, I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere. She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. I don't need a brother, she whispered. I don't need anyone to fix me. I took a step closer. You're not broken, Emily, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You're not. You've just been carrying this on your own for too long. Let me carry some of it for you. Let me help. For the first time, her defenses faltered. The anger melted away, leaving only the vulnerability of someone who had been hurt too many times to trust anyone. She nodded slowly, then whispered, Why now? Why after all this time? Because I'm finally ready to face what's been hiding in the dark. And I think you are too. The rest of the conversation was quiet, tentative. We sat down together in one of the booths, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was chasing ghosts. We talked about our father, about what he'd hidden and why. I didn't excuse his actions, but I began to understand him. And for the first time, I saw Emily, not just as a stranger, but as part of me. As I left the diner later that day, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe it was forgiveness. Maybe it was acceptance. Maybe it was both. But one thing was clear. The past was never going to be the same. But maybe, just maybe, we could start over. Together. The days after meeting Emily felt like a whirlwind. I hadn't expected it to be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. But what surprised me the most was how much I needed it. How much we needed it. We spent hours talking. About our father. About Carol. About the life I never knew. And the life she had been forced to build, without any of the pieces that should have been there. It wasn't easy. It wasn't pretty. But it was real. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was living in a lie. We laughed, we cried. We shared stories. And slowly, the walls between us, the years of silence and anger, began to crumble. There was still so much we didn't understand. But for the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone. The next few weeks were a blur of visits, phone calls, and late-night conversations. Emily wasn't ready to fully trust me. I understood that. But there were moments, tiny cracks in her armor, when I could see she was starting to let me in. I didn't expect her to forgive me. I didn't expect her to forgive our father either. But forgiveness wasn't the point. The point was to be there for each other, to stop running away from the pain and start facing it together. Then one night, everything came to a head. It was a cold evening, and I was sitting with Emily in her small apartment. We had just finished talking about the things that had haunted us both for years, and she turned to me, her eyes tired but determined. You know, I've been thinking about what you said, she began. About forgiveness. And I realized, it's not just about forgiving Dad. I raised an eyebrow. She took a deep breath. It's about forgiving myself. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had spent so much time focused on our father's mistakes that I hadn't even considered the weight she had been carrying. She had spent her whole life wondering if she was worth being loved. Wondering why she had been abandoned. I didn't know how to respond at first. But then I did what I knew I needed to do. I reached across the table, and for the first time, I let her see my own pain, my own struggle with the idea of forgiveness. And together, we realized something profound. The next day, I went back to my father. It wasn't easy. I didn't have all the answers. And honestly, I didn't know how he would respond, but I had to do it. For Emily, for me, for all the pieces of our past that had been broken. When I walked into the house, my father was sitting in his chair, the same chair he had spent years sitting in while the world moved around him. He looked up at me, his face still weathered by the pain he had been carrying for so long. But this time, I didn't see the man who had tried to protect me by hiding the truth. I saw a man who had been lost and who was still trying to find his way back. "I'm here to talk," I said, my voice steady but uncertain. He didn't say anything, just nodded. And for the first time in my life, I sat across from him, not as a son trying to live up to some impossible standard, but as someone who was ready to face the truth no matter how ugly it was. "I met her," I said quietly. "Emily, my sister." My father's eyes welled up with tears. "I've been a coward, son," he whispered. "I've hurt her. I've hurt you, and I can't take it back." "You can't," I said, "but we can start something new." I didn't wait for him to respond. I took a deep breath. "I've forgiven you, and I've forgiven myself. But Emily, she needs more time. She's not ready yet." He nodded as if the weight of those words finally made sense to him. "I'll try, Jose. I'll try to make it right. For all of us." A few months later, Emily came to visit. She still wasn't sure about everything, but she was trying to understand the parts of herself she had buried for so long. And that's when I knew we might never have the perfect family. We might never heal every wound, but we were still here, together, and maybe for the first time that was enough. The garage was still there, just like it had always been, and the box was still in the corner, hidden away, but I didn't need to open it again, because the past had already been laid bare, and the truth, as painful as it was, and had finally set us free.